Welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast, produced by Focus Shift Films and sponsored by Welsh sports fans. I'm your host, Daniel J. Harris. I'm a filmmaker and entrepreneur working across sport, and I'm a huge fan of sports content. This podcast is my chance to meet amazing people who are doing amazing things in the sports content space and to share their stories with you in the hope that it inspires ideas. On this episode, we have the amazing Rob Young, MBE, and he's the CEO of SwitchThe, a fantastic charity that helps professional athletes transition into civilian life. Rob, welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background prior to setting up SwitchThe?
Thanks very much, Dan. Thank you for inviting me on. So I guess the way I talk about my background in the context of what I do, I'm just a kid from Norwich who loved playing sport. That was always part of what I did. I was okay at football, not great. And I think my driving force in life was, well, if I wasn't going to be good enough to play sport, I wanted to work in sport in some way, shape or form. So my journey took me via the East Midlands and Loughborough University, where I suddenly becoming a small fish in a very big pond of some incredibly talented sports people and very bright people all around the sort of sports industry. I've been fortunate enough to spend 6 years working on London 2012, which was certainly a life-shaping experience. And for the last 10 years in different guises, been involved with SwitchThe.
Fantastic. So tell us about that then, kind of working on London 2012. What was your role? Kind of how intense was that? How amazing experience was it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those where I joked with colleagues, you could write the book about the sublime, the ridiculous, the amazing, and the frustrating, because it was all wrapped into that experience. But so my job was part of the Nations and Regions team, which was to ensure the legacy of the games was spread across the whole of the UK. So I was based in the northwest of England. And I think, which probably tells a little bit about myself as a person, is I'm quite a stubborn individual. So when London wins a bid, you're like, got to work on the Olympic Games, once in a lifetime opportunity, home games, got to be involved. But like I looked at it and like I was inspired by the message that Seb Coe said in Singapore about inspire a generation. But I also thought London's going to be fine because all the resources are going to go into London. Actually, what's the reality of like trying to make it meaningful and impactful on the northwest of England? And that challenge excited me, and I sort of ran into it. Naively and just with a real sense of purpose around the opportunity that I was lucky enough to have.
So you just dived in feet first. You're like, I'm not sure where this is going to take me, but I am up for this challenge. What are the work involved, and how do you make sure that an Olympic Games in London engages with someone in Pembrokeshire as a lasting legacy in the northwest of England or anywhere else in the far corners of the country?
Great question. So I think the starting point is recognizing that the games themselves are a catalyst. There's magic dust about those moments, and we can all remember those sorts of moments of things and experiences around sport events that have just inspired us. But the thing there is, they are moments that inspire. So how can you create that magic dust and connect it to real opportunities? So in the context of sport, it's all well and good a kid seeing something on the Olympics and being inspired, but if they haven't got the opportunity, a club to go to, a facility there, a coach to make a great experience, you lose the moment. So it's like building the infrastructure to capitalize on the magic dust. So you're then trying to connect to every opportunity you can related to the game. So whether it's about hosting pre-games training camps, and we had the 15 Oceania countries, which is a bit of a geography test for people, but like tiny islands like Tuvalu and Nauru and the Marshall Islands coming over and experiencing like training camps in the northwest. We maxed out on the torch relay to create every possible opportunity for people to be engaged and feel the games with them. And then I guess there's the stuff around business contracts and in trying to help Northwest businesses win contracts related to the games. And then the things that really took me out of my comfort zone, which is around the Cultural Olympiad, because that's not my background. That I'm as I've said it was about sport for me, but being involved in with colleagues around commissioning Turner Award-winning prize artists and like just learning about stuff that you never know. And it's been really fortunate for me because not by design, but by fortune, I've been exposed to lots of different things. Because I was talking about public sector procurement, I was talking about volunteering, was talking about culture, all these things that weren't about sport, but actually I was then learning all these different things from these different sectors that I was able then to bring back in terms of my own development as a person. I've been able to apply since.
Fantastic. Yeah, sport can be an amazing catalyst, can it? And it can inspire. You've got to have that clear pathway, haven't you? I know I've done a lot of work with the FAW over the years, and they've worked a lot on their pathways. You have to have a 12-year-old child in West Wales be able to look at Gareth Bale and understand how, over a couple of simple steps, they can achieve that same thing. And I saw something after the 2017 Champions League final in Cardiff. It's the first time the women's and men's Champions League final happened in the same city. And you had all these young girls that went to watch the Champions League final and could see female players playing at the highest level. Up to that point, they'd maybe been watching Wales play in Euro 2016, seeing Gareth Bale and going, I want to be Gareth Bale. But for a young girl, at some point, they realise they can't be Gareth Bale. But then you see the Women's Champions League final and they go, but I could be that. I could be Jess Fishlock, or do you mean I could be one of these female players? And then you chart that pathway for them so they understand it. Play for your club, play for your region, play for your country, play professionally, play at the highest level. And you've got to outline that, or otherwise, it's just a lovely event, razzmatazz, brilliant. And then afterwards, you've got empty stadiums and you've got nothing's changed. And there's people in rural areas that are never going to be able to be one of those people they saw on the television.
Completely agree. I think there's a phrase that you hear a lot about, you can't be what you don't see. And that's a massive thing. And I think it was hugely powerful with London with the Paralympics and about how it's driven better inclusion. Still a long way to go, but like really important. And you see the growth of women's sport. The other thing is, I think sport sometimes can separate these things falsely and create false distinctions. So I'm firmly in the camp that events and elite sport, and through lots of different experiences I've had, can impact upon society. So I've seen Premier League footballers go into projects in Newham, talking to people that are with type 2 diabetes, that are far away from activities you can imagine, who have helped to inspire them to get active. And a lot of this is about recognizing what those, I guess, unique assets, events, sports people as role models, and the clubs and the brands that they bring, is how do they connect? So if you're trying to achieve something, in your example, it's about getting more girls playing football. Well, look at that event and think about how that event can help you achieve the objective. It wasn't about trying to overlay a new set of action. It was just about going, that's an opportunity. How can I use that opportunity to achieve the existing objective I already have?
Absolutely. And yeah, like my theory is that nothing connects people like sport. Nothing brings people together like sport. Sports clubs, sports athletes, they've all got audience now. So you can use sport as a fantastic vehicle for delivering stories, for pulling people together, for tackling societal issues. Because there's nothing, like in Wales, there's 3 million people, but there's nothing that brings all them 3 million together like a rugby match or a football match. An 18-year-old in Cardiff lives a very different life to a 65-year-old in Llangefni on Anglesey. But you might find him in the same stadium on the same day, singing the national anthem, supporting the rugby team or the football team. So you can break down all those barriers and all that division and bring people together. It automatically brings kind of audience in because the clubs and the sports athletes have their audience. And then you can kind of use them, their story, their upbringing, their challenges, whatever it is, to showcase a pathway or to tackle a problem or to share a story that enlightens someone, inspires someone, or changes their view of the world. And sport can be incredibly, incredibly powerful for those sorts of things.
100% agree. And I think the important thing to recognize is it can do it, but actually we should be intentional about how we use sport as a tool for positive. Because there's also a debate out there about things like sport washing and purpose washing and things like that in the charitable sector. So we know it's got that ability to break down barriers and bring people together and do these amazing things, but it doesn't just happen. You have to be intentional about how you want to use it and how you can capitalize on it. You look at it in the way that sports people can be role models. They can be negative role models or positive role models. How we support them to build their personal brand to be positive role models is a really important thing. That doesn't just happen. How can we be intentional to create those opportunities?
Absolutely, yeah. It doesn't happen by magic, does it? It takes a little bit of strategy, a little bit of planning, a little bit of thinking. We have something here. How can we maximize it and make an impact? And I suppose that kind of brings me on quite nicely to switch the play. You're obviously working in sport, you're working with sports people. You could see there was a problem that needed to be tackled. So what was that, and how did switch the play come about?
Yeah, so the origins for me personally were really back to spending time at Loughborough, and a lot of my peers, particularly from a football background, were people that had been involved in academy environments and come out, and in their instance, their safety net was the education. But you speak to them, there was a common theme around the negative experiences that they had leaving the game. I did my dissertation on my masters all around football academies and the experience around English football academies at the time. So these sort of things that didn't necessarily have a direction at the time, but were just experiences that I had, things that interest me. And then it was back in 2013, 2014 with three other friends at the time. Through those different experiences that we had as coaches, people that knew, friends of sports people, there was a common theme of the things that we were seeing. Sports people we knew were having really bad experiences coming out of sport. And I guess there was a naivety to a conversation going, well, we're helping people individually, but could we or should we do something more to be part of the solution? And that very naive conversation was really where SwitchThe Play formed from.
Fantastic. Yeah, the people don't realize like it's less than 1%, isn't it, of young players that are in academies going to be professional footballers. Like there's a massive drop off. And if you're a teenager to set your sights on becoming a professional footballer and then all of a sudden 16, 17, 18, you're told you're not going to be one, you lose your entire sense of identity. And then at the other end of the scale as well, like I've been working with Mark O'Brien, who used to play for Newport County, and we've been talking about his story and how we can make a film about his story. He's had to retire due to kind of heart health. And he said, you just kind of wake up one day and go, well, yesterday I was a footballer. Today, what am I? Who am I? Like, what do I do? And he couldn't get his head around the fact that people went to the gym if they weren't training to be an athlete. Like, why would you go to the gym if you're not training to be a footballer or a marathon runner or whatever? They kind of they put in a world where there's a certain mindset, and then all of a sudden you're out of that, and you're looking at the world and thinking, what is this? Who am I? Where's my place in this world? And that seems to be a very kind of a very it seems to be a big problem, really, isn't it? There's not enough support on that for that process of transitioning out of sport.
Completely. And I guess that's where we started. So back in 2014, there was not a lot happening at all, to be perfectly honest. And you look now, there's more. I think the phrase duty of care is something that is more common. How well that's seen through is not always as well as you would hope and like, but we're definitely moving in a better direction. The way I describe it, because we're one of one as a charity, there are no other charities that do what we do in the UK. And it's hard because people, the starting point is going, why do they need help? They've all made money. What, like they've had all this amazing life. And the way I describe it is there's a hidden majority of people in sport. So if you look at on the way in, all these people with talent on a talent pathway somewhere in whatever sport. In football, we know 97% of people who are in an English football academy will never play a minute in the Premier League.
Wow.
Just it won't. And as well as we're getting at developing incredible footballers through at the top end, we want a system that looks after 100% of the people and not just the 3% of people that are coming through. It's the reality of a talent pathway. And then for those that do come through and are lucky enough to have a successful career in sport, the vast majority of them don't make life-changing sums of money. Recent BBC survey showed that around 60% of elite British sportswomen earn less than £20,000 a year through their sport. National living wage is around £19,000. So you are the absolute pinnacle in your profession, and you may be earning national living wage.
Wow.
Because a lot of these sports are part-time and athletes are having to work alongside playing. Allied to that, for the vast majority of sports people, your sport doesn't end on your terms. 70% of sports people is through injury, contract not renewed, deselection. So the end is not on your terms. And if you don't prepare for having a smooth transition, it can hit you like a bolt from the blue, because like your whole life has been about being, your identity is Dan the footballer, and suddenly take that away and it's like, who am I? what do I stand for? What do I want to do for the rest of my life? Because most of your, as good as sports science might be, the most of your working life is likely to be after your sporting career.
Yeah.
And then you look at the evidence, around 50% of sports people say they struggle with their mental health after finishing sport.
Wow. And I think there's a stat, is this something like 40% of ex-professional footballers are likely to be bankrupt after their career, because you live in a certain life on a certain wage, and then you're only in your mid-30s and all of a sudden you're earning nothing or a hell of a lot less money, but you're still trying to maintain that house and that car and those holidays and these things. And if they lose that money, it's very, very difficult to go and earn that again, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? There's not many other opportunities where you could be a 35-year-old ex-professional footballer and earn £50,000 a week.
Absolutely. And if that is what you need to earn in terms of the lifestyle that you want to lead and supporting family, etc., like, to get to that position is like, what are the steps you want to take and in what career? And if you don't know because you've never explored, that's a really tough point, because you've got to restart your apprenticeship from scratch. So our whole strategy as a charity is about prevention. So how can we work with sports people from a young age to recognize that developing yourself as a human being, your identity, your skills, and all of those things, they will help you to be better at your sport. And the evidence shows that it will, in lots of different ways, but it will also set you up for success in your life beyond sport whenever that happens. And hopefully that's when you've achieved everything you want for your sporting career and you're leaving on your own terms.
That's it. And we talk about kind of like Premier League footballers and earning 50 grand a week. And I'm sure there's people at home going, oh God, first world problems. Do you mean losing 50 grand a week as a job? They should have put some money aside. But I think you alluded to it earlier. There's a lot of footballers that don't earn that money, and other sports are not as awash with money. So you can get to the end of what looks like a glittering career, but actually have no safety net. And I think a lot of sports people they're building an audience as they go in, and I don't think they maximize that audience potential enough to build their own personal brand, which is beyond their sport. So if they're investing in local businesses in their hometown, when they finish being a tennis player, footballer, Formula One driver, hockey player, whatever that is, if they've invested in other local businesses in their hometown or the area that they're in, and they've kind of adopted as their home, and they're a part of that community, and they've built sustainable businesses, that can see them through the rest of their life, and they've got a little bit of a succession plan. Whereas it sounds like a lot of them kind of are almost blinkered to the fact that this isn't going to go on forever, and there's a little bit of a shock to the system at the end, isn't it?
Yeah, and I get it. If you're like, and you could tell it, like, you speak to any Olympic athlete now, they are focused now, know exactly when they're competing in Paris, and that's been their focus for 4 years. And I'm like, I get it, and that's completely understandable. Our thing is about like finding those points where you can actually get some downtime, because you can't be in that bubble all the time, to be curious, to learn about something else, to spark about your identity, to get out of the high performance bubble and start to explore what you might do next, and interests and passions and that side of things. But what you see with a lot of sports, and you're coming into this summer with the Olympic and Paralympic Games, those individuals in a lot of lower profile sports are not earning lots of money. So for them, this is their final go at it. But we're getting really good at the Olympic Games. We look at 96 and how many medals we won and how many we've won in the last 2 or 3 editions. We've got loads of medalists coming through now, but that's harder to cut through in terms of your profile. So there are only so many reality TV shows, only so many pundit jobs. So actually recognizing some of that you could have achieved all these amazing things, but it doesn't set you up automatically to mean that these opportunities are going to be there. So when you're in the system, how can you maximize your network? How can you build a brand that makes you stand out in whatever it is you want to do? Be curious and explore these things, because ultimately there's loads of benefit in terms of the well-being of just getting outside of the eat, sleep, train, repeat. But actually longer term, it will set yourself up for success.
Riverside Sports Bar with Welsh sports fans is Newport's premier sports bar and has been voted best sports bar at the Welsh Hospitality Awards. With a range of huge TVs, an incredible food menu with burgers, dirty fries and much more, including vegan options, it is the place to watch sport. Visit www.riversidesportsbarnewport.com to find out more.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these sports people, they're kind of so focused on their sport and I got to be the best. And there's that little bit of I can't show weakness. Do you know what I mean? I can't think about what's beyond this. I can't think about what happens if I fail. I've got to bury all them doubts and I've got to focus on success. But that could be a lonely place. And if they haven't really kind of put the building blocks in place for beyond there, they find themselves in a difficult situation where their identity is wrapped up in I am an athlete, I am this. And then when they lose that identity, it's kind of crisis time from a personal perspective, isn't it? Do you mean?
Completely. Identity comes up every time and again. You sort of look at the financial well-being and identity are two common factors to look at. For us, the language that we sort of ban as a charity, because I'm sort of sounds a bit strong, but like when you start talking about plan B with sports people and the blinkers are on going, but plan A is winning that Olympic medal, they're not going to listen. You immediately, as soon as you call it plan B in life, it's only human nature that you immediately put a lace of worth on that's less than plan A. Well, the reality is we've got one life and one plan. So how do we understand that actually going and volunteering in the community or going to university to learn a language or whatever it might be is actually going to help you with your sporting goal, and ... at whatever point you finish will help to set you up for success. And you see more and more examples of athletes coming out, and you listen to stories and people like Gary Neville, like when he was playing for Man United in England and winning Premier League trophies and all of that, he was spending time volunteering in businesses and sitting around boardroom tables and starting to learn about business. But that stuff never got talked about. It's always seen as, oh, well, actually the narrative is he's not prioritizing his sport. Well, you can't train 24 hours a day. We've got a inspirational, one of our deliverers, a guy called Toby Silver. He's a footballer. And he says, I divide my day into 3 periods of 8. 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of focusing on my football, my training, my recovery and all of that things. What am I going to do with the other 8 hours? And that's the way he thinks about it, is just think about those times. And like, I know that sounds oversimplistic, but we even talk about principles of going, well, 90-10 rule. So what can you do with 10% of your downtime? Just 10% of your downtime in terms of the networks you might build, in terms of the businesses that might support you now and in the future, of the curiosity that might find a path that identifies the purpose of what you want to do next. All of those things come from what you might just spend that 10% of your downtime doing.
And a lot of these sports people as well, they don't actually realize they've developed a lot of very useful transferable skills: leadership, working under pressure, problem solving, mindset. They don't realize that actually they've got a pretty full toolkit of stuff that they can put to any industry or any job or any role and find success. But they've kind of been blinkered by, I do this sport, not realizing that actually they can be really good at other stuff. Like earlier today, I was talking with Rhea Burridge-Mail, and she played hockey. She was then a CEO of Hockey Wales. And she talks about a lot of them things, those skills she learned in sport, helped her to be a business leader as well. Do you mean in terms of leading a team, making decisions, kind of looking after the mindset of yourself and your team? There's a lot of transferable skills. And I think that's a part of what you guys do as well, is helping them go, hey, you're pretty useful, actually. You might not be able to play football or hockey anymore, but you're useful.
Massively. There's lots of evidence out there. Businesses, lots of corporates get the value of what sports people can bring in terms of those soft skills. Our job, I guess, what we spend a lot of time with sports people do is like help them identify what those transferable skills are and recognize that they are translatable. Because when you look at a CV, it might be using slightly different language, and recognizing that actually in your sporting context, no, that's what that means. So there's a bit about translation. There's a bit about confidence. So someone might go, yeah, I'm a great leader in sport because I was the captain. But they might not feel as confident of translating that into a different context. So it's like trying to build that confidence in that it is translatable. And we have lots of examples. I've done it myself where we've interviewed sports people for jobs. And you ask them to give you an example around demonstrating a particular skill. And often they apologize for using sport as an example. And you're like, never apologize for using it, because you're demonstrating that you have the fundamental skill. And you're also probably performing it in a high pressure situation, which tells me everything I need to know. My job as an employer is, what are the things I need to put in place to give you the technical skills that you might need to be able to do job X or job Y?
That's it. They don't realize that actually when you get them to explain a situation where they've been under pressure and they've had to solve a problem quickly. If the average Joe says, "Oh, my grandmother lost her glasses and the news was coming on, she wanted to be able to watch it properly. I had to scramble around and find her glasses." And you've got an athlete saying, "Well, we went 1-0 down within 5 minutes in a World Cup final or whatever." Like that's a massively high pressure situation where you've got to dig deep and you've got to show so many qualities, and they don't realize that. And going back to Mark O'Brien again, he said like he was Mark O'Brien the footballer, and then he can't play football, but he's now learned that he's Mark O'Brien the person, and that he has a lot to give this world outside of football. And he's been talking with people about his heart health. And if somebody messages him on Twitter or Instagram, says, "Look, I'm going in for a triple heart bypass. Could I possibly have a chat to you about your experiences of having your heart valve replaced?" And he's like, "No problem at all." And he sees the value in sharing his story with them. So his identity now is not wrapped up in Mark O'Brien, the footballer. It's Mark O'Brien, the person who has played football and who has done this and who has overcome these things and who can be useful to these people in these situations. And that then means that his purpose in life is wider than just playing a sport. So you can go in any direction with that kind of mindset, can't you?
Completely agree. And it's so when we support athletes, we take a very holistic view. So we'll speak to them and understand, well, where are you at in relation to your purpose and identity? And some people might be okay in that space, others might not. Where are you at in terms of your mental well-being? Where are you at in terms of your financial well-being? Aspects that we've discussed on this call. Where are you at in terms of your occupational? So do you know what you want to do next? So it's taking that very holistic view with an individual to then build a plan around, okay, so you feel that you're right around purpose and identity, but you actually got some issues here around financial. So how can we help you in that space? It's just recognizing that's individual, but if you take an holistic view to helping someone transition, because the job part is only part of it. And we see lots of sports people that get a job and 6 months later, they're back again looking because it hasn't fulfilled their purpose, or there are other aspects of dealing with that transition that might be related to identity that they haven't got through yet, that means they're stuck in this place. And it's actually about helping them find that happy, healthy, positive place beyond sport. And like the world of sport as it is, and those stats that I said don't have to be like that way. We can develop amazing sports people and develop great human beings at the same time. They are not mutually exclusive things.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're totally right with that. Just want to take you back a little bit now. So you've identified there's a challenge there. How did you go about setting up SwitchThe as a business? And then when did it transition from business into charity? And what was the thinking around that?
Yeah, so I guess the conversation around the naivety of let's do this thing. I think what I would say probably as a lesson around business, and there's something important around circumstances. So at the time that I did it, I was my own boss. I had my own company as a consultant. So it sort of meant I had a bit more time to give to a passion project. And ultimately, if I reflect back for a few of us, is like, if I hadn't had that time, I think it would have been really difficult when you're trying to get something off the ground. And it starts as a passion project, an idea. And that was that, shall we be part of the solution? Being really clear about why we were doing it, which was about helping sports people. And it wasn't about profit. So the whole conversation was, and we started that, and it took us on a philanthropic journey. So we started and went, well, we're a social enterprise. So we registered as a community interest company because we were clear about purpose. And then from a million ideas that we had about what we could do, you start to filter it down to what it is. And the biggest thing that I think we learned along the way was, and particularly working with sports people, the environment around them can be very protected. There are people around them that are athletes and agents and people like, and I understand why there's a protected environment, but also it makes it quite hard to earn the trust. So we're like coming in with these ideas and things that we can help with, and you're trying to break down the doors. And that takes time to earn the trust and credibility of organizations. So that took a long while to start building it. And ultimately, for us, you start getting a bit of traction. We managed to get in with the Premier League and delivering on their life skills program. And when you start to say you work with organisations like that and other doors start opening, you start building a bit of momentum. But fundamentally for us, from a scrappy startup social enterprise, what we recognised was sport doesn't invest enough money into looking after athletes. That's the reality of it. So if we were always fighting for the scraps off the table, we're not going to make the sort of difference we want to make. So that took us down the route of charity. And we went, well, if we're a charity, we can bring in resources from other places that allows us to have a greater impact. And that's ultimately why we made that decision to transition. It took a while, and we managed to get charitable status in February 2020, 6 weeks before the pandemic, which was an interesting challenge.
Oh, wow. Yeah, fantastic timing there. And yeah, the work you're doing is absolutely brilliant, and you've built an incredible organization. You're doing great work, and you've built a real team ethos there. So what are you looking for when you're building your team and you're bringing people in? What sort of personality do you need in SwitchThe?
So it's a great question. I think for me, like, we're trying to build a culture about the way we want to do it. So trying to really being really intentional about the identity of who we are, what we stand for, and therefore the types of people that we believe fit that. And so what we did, probably about sort of 3 or 4 years in, we developed a team code. And our team code is around not just the values that we have as a charity, but the behaviours and the way that we want to live those values. And I think for that, we're trying to ultimately recruit people who resonate into that team code and who fit that. So it's the different, that feels very important to us. The technical skills bit is, yes, you need those things, but fundamentally that passion, which is one of our values, does that passion come through that they want to make a difference in this space? Because that's where the care and the compassion comes from, which is really important. And actually, do they fit in terms of the way that we want to work as a team around the one team ethos that we have? So you sort of start to look at that, and in the way that you will then, I guess, filter candidates is whether you're using it explicitly or implicitly, is just going, how does this person fit? The challenge being you don't want to just create a load of typecasts of individuals that just think and do like yourself. So getting that diversity is important. But I think that we've been lucky enough to be able to do that.
Fantastic. And my next question was going to be around the team code. It's obviously a very, very important part of the organization, what you do, how you do it, why you do it. Did that come to you as an epiphany? Did it come to you into a dream? Did you spend years developing that? How did that come about?
Yeah, I think it came about as when we were a social enterprise, and it was like a little bit about trying to create some ways of working. So we're all a group of individuals that did this thing, and we all worked in slightly different ways. And one of our now trustees, Chris Brindley, who was the chair of Rugby League World Cup 2021, like brilliant individual, said, like, guys, you need a team code. You need to like start. I didn't like, who are we? What do we stand for? What's important to us? So he took us through a process where we looked at identifying those things around values and what was important to us as individuals. And then there was a process of like bringing that down. And what we've created, which you can see on our website, is those words became buckets and themes that we've given names to, and then we've given them images. So we're trying to make it much more memorable in terms of what it actually stands for. So I could describe to you now, you'll see if you look on our team code, which is hard on a podcast, but to describe, you've got a roller coaster. What's the roller coaster mean? Well, the roller coaster is about reminding us to enjoy the ride. It's about reminding us it'll be tough at times, but the roller coaster always has the fun bit as well. It reminds us that we want to have some fun doing this. So that's what you got, the roller coaster. But inside the roller coaster, there are people, and they're wearing a T-shirt with no elephants on it. Why no elephants? Because actually feedback's really important to us. So let's make sure we've got no elephants in the room and actually embrace feedback. And then if you look at the front of the roller coaster, it says the words, the time is always right to do the right thing. Not our quote, borrowed from elsewhere. I think it was Nelson Mandela or someone far more impactful than us. But it's like really important as a guiding principle. So when we put challenge to ourselves, it's like, well, front of the roller coaster, time's always right to do the right thing. And that's just part of what the team code is, but that's how it's come together. Interestingly, you asked the question because we did this back in 2017, 2018, and actually we've started a refresh. New members of the team come in, lots of stuff changed. How do we make this come to life? So it's not corporate wallpaper, but we're living it and helping us to ultimately drive what we're trying to do, which is to have an impact on sports people.
So that team code is like a living, breathing document that every now and then you're going back and you're refreshing it. You're looking at it. The world's changed, sport has changed, our team's changed. Whatever that is that still true to us? How can we develop it? How can we evolve that to make sure that we're still living and breathing it in the changing world and the changing situation we're in?
Every week we talk about the team code in formal our team stand-ups, where we'll talk about examples of things that we're doing. We have focus sessions around different areas of the team code. We're like, how can we do this better? What we're doing well? What can we do better? Like using that in terms of trying to help create some ways of working. So I think that's really important for us, and ultimately it is about making sure it's not just a bit of corporate wallpaper that sounds nice and looks good, but actually is ultimately how we want to do the things that actually will make a difference.
Yeah, and you see this a lot in sport as well, don't you? There's a book about the All Blacks, and one of their ethos is kind of everyone kind of sweeps the sheds. Do you know what I mean? Everyone does the kind of the small jobs. We're all in this together, and you guys are kind of obviously taking that influence from sport, putting it into your business, reminding yourselves regularly of who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and giving you that purpose and that drive so you can kind of be as dynamic as possible and be living and breathing what it is SwitchThe is all about.
Yeah, that's very much what we try to do. And are we perfect at it? Absolutely not. Have we made loads of mistakes along the way? Of course we have. I reflect back, and I suppose you get to this because we're in our 10th year, ultimately with pride about what we've managed to achieve. And I love the fact and the energy I had this morning around talking with the team now about like how we did it and why we did it, and like being really trying to be open about how we can make it better, because that was brilliant at a point in time, but there's constant evolutions of it, and like how we use it and bring it to life is really important. So yes, there's some non-negotiables in there about what we think is really important as an identity, but like let's make it work for us, not just be something that sits on a bit of thing and we can say, aren't we great?
Fantastic. So tell us what the next steps are for SwitchThe then, and what you hope to achieve in the future.
Yeah, it's a very exciting time. So we'll got a new piece of work starting, which is massively significant for the charity, which is rooted around Paris 2024. So we'll be talking much more about that in the not too distant future. So that's going to keep us very busy. We've also got a continuation of programs that we're running at the moment. So we're delivering with the Premier League, with League Football Education, with the Women's Super League around life skills education for young footballers. We've got a really brilliant project at the moment around women in sport. We've got 20 women, sports women on a program, supporting them with group-based and individual mentoring for a whole transition journey. So that's really exciting. And also, I guess a little bit of a plug, in July, we'll be going live with some trustee recruitment. So we're looking to bring in some new trustees. So if there's anyone out there listening to this that might want to get involved and support a charity, then absolutely we're looking for some help and some ways in which people can support us, because the job is far from done. There's a lot of sports people out there that need help, and we're excited. I guess we've sort of got to a point, and now it's like pushing on to where we can go next.
Well, I wish you all the best of that. Like, some of the work that you guys have done is absolutely amazing. We've had multiple conversations before about what you're doing and some of the things that I'm looking to do in terms of content creation around sport. So yeah, hopefully we're going to be working together in the not so distant future as well. And I'd love to help you guys. I'd love to work with you guys, because the stuff you're doing is important, and it's fantastic work.
I'm sure we will, Dan. I appreciate your support.
Fantastic. So thank you very much, Rob, and thank you for those at home that are watching or listening. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Make sure you go and check out SwitchThe and see what they're all about, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you're getting all the new episodes as they're coming through. Thank you very much, guys. Don't forget to like and share this episode, and subscribe to the channel for more content.